All right, welcome everyone to the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show. We are back here today on another Tuesday to go over week 3 of the NFL season. I'm Jack Saban, joined by Matt Hannafin. Matt, real quick, how we doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Oh, doing all right. Early class, always fun, but overall, I had a good week of football, at least with my team, so
We'll get to mine later.
indeed we will. But I think just right away we should get into it, starting with first game we had of the week, which was the San Francisco 49ers playing the New York Giants. I think just I'll go first real quick. Nothing that really unexpected happened in this game to me. I mean, that in our Vendetta picks, I think all of us had the Niners covering by like 10,
Mhm.
I think it was. I don't know if anyone had the Giants covering. And I mean, it's just this Niners team is just so good on basically every level, offense, defense, even special teams, and not just specifically offense and defense, but on every level of both sides. Like on defense, their pass rush is one of the best in the game. They have that great secondary, and then offensively, I mean, they just really seem like they can do whatever they want. And the Giants just didn't really. I mean, they didn't really seem to be able to stop it. They kept it kind of close going into halftime, but the Niners, I think, were just far and away the better team, and that kind of showed.
I mean, it doesn't help that New York was without Saquon there, without
Yeah,
Andrew Thomas. I think Evan Neal got hurt in the middle of the game too. But like, I just don't know. I don't really don't know what to think about this Giants team. Like, I don't think they're like terrible, but they're not good. Like they had 29 yards on 11 carries. They had 10 first downs in total throughout the game. They really didn't get Jalen Hyatt involved at all. And that was a little bit confusing to me because I know uh, I saw some people on Twitter like when they do like the all 22, there are some routes that they missed him on, deep routes down the field, and that's really how you can beat the 49ers by stretching the ball out, or stretching the field out and trying to open up that defense a little bit. The Giants didn't do that at all. Um, they were getting, I mean, Nick Bosa, I think, had his like first sack of the season. He went like, I think he got like a 5 or 6 game streak without any sacks. He nearly got a safety uh,
yeah,
after they tried to do like a bootleg with Daniel Bellinger blocking Nick Bosa, and it's like that's not going to work out at all. Um,
unsurprising.
yeah, it's like I don't know. Someone who's smarter than me would have to explain to me why that play call was in play. Um, or like, I mean, Debo looked phenomenal. McCaffrey looked phenomenal as always. Like those guys were humming. It was a little bit of like a more shaky Brock game that we've at least seen from him. Like he was missing some throws. He seemed a bit rushed a little bit at times, but I think he figured it out as the game went on. And again, like as the game got out of hand, they were just teeing off on Daniel Jones, and it was a little bit. The pressure was kind of off Brock Purdy's shoulders. Not that it was really on because of he was facing the Giants, but um, it was just like this game was a stinker. Like again,
Yeah,
it's,
a
it
lot of those this week.
yeah, a lot of those this week. Spoiler, and like the Giants are also going to be on prime time, like 2 of the next 3 weeks as well, because they're on I think Monday night against
God,
the
well, at least
Seahawks, and
this is
then
not the Bears,
week 5.
Broncos.
I mean, still not good though. I mean, again, they scored 12 combined points in 2 primetime games. Not that that's going to continue, but nah, this game stunk. Again,
Yeah,
unfortunate with the injuries that the Giants had, but the
yeah, I think
49ers are
just
just also really good to your point. Like I'm not trying to discredit anything they did or done. But,
yeah, I think just the thing with this Giants team is I think we kind of like more or less saw them hit their ceiling last year, which is like,
Mhm.
a sneaky wild card team that, you know, can, steal a win if they're able to play their brand of football. But like realistically, it's just I've never been a big Daniel Jones guy. I thought they were kind of handcuffed in that whole contract negotiations of having to pay him because there really wasn't, the old adage is the grass greener on the other sides. So it's like they were kind of forced to give Daniel Jones a lot of money, and I just think that this Giants team is kind of more or less ceilinged or handicapped, kind of at what we saw last year.
And it doesn't help when like you're not setting him up for success. And in the term of like they did get Darren Waller in the offseason, but specifically in this game, it didn't feel like. I mean, again, it's hard without Saquon. It's hard without uh, one of the better young left tackles in the league, and Andrew Thomas. So like those two injuries are already hurt your offense's ceiling. But it felt like they weren't even trying to like get him. They weren't even trying to like move the pocket. I mean, I guess they did with the rollout with the Bellinger thing. That
But
we
that was
just
the worst
referenced.
time to do that.
Yeah. But like it didn't feel like they were trying to move the pocket. I mean, they were doing short, predictable throws that the Niners seeked out as being short and predictable throws. Like it wasn't. They weren't again. It was didn't feel like there was a lot of them. It didn't feel like Daniel Jones was being put in the best spot, so to speak. And again, part of that's injuries, part of that's scheme, part of that's just who you're facing. Because
Yeah,
that Niners defense is fast as hell at all three levels. Uh, and it just, I wonder how much of it is Daniel Jones versus the inverse. But
yeah. I mean, usually in a
who knows?
case like that, it's more than just one thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Giants have also had a pretty difficult start to the season in terms of their schedule.
Yeah.
It's been kind of brutal for them, but yeah, I mean, I think aside from what we've covered in that game, no other real big takeaways. You know, the Niners are going to be one of the best teams in the NFC. Giants, I mean, are going to have a fun time dealing with the rest of this NFC East gauntlet. But moving on to our next game, which was an even worse game by pretty much every metric, was the Cleveland Browns
Oh,
beating
jeez.
the Tennessee Titans
Oh my
27 to
God.
3. I mean, the game was in Cleveland. I mean, I still don't feel like we need to spend too much time on this. The Titans are just terrible. They might be one of the worst teams in the league. Like, their offensive line is just so bad. I mean,
So
I got Derrick Henry in a league, and it's just like, I'm
um,
starting to get scared now. He just looks like he can't even do anything because every time he gets the ball, there's four guys in the backfield.
Tajay Spears is taking snaps away from him now.
He's
No
taking
running back was doing that before
Well, yeah,
him.
he's taking snaps away from him, but he's not taking production away from him. Is the
Yeah.
thing? It's like he's taking the snaps
Yeah.
away, but he's like I think Spears had what 4 carries for 6 yards.
At one point,
So it's
um,
like
I think it was halftime. I don't know if it was. I can't remember if it was just Derrick Henry's rushing yards or if it was their team rushing yards or like what exactly it was. But they showed a graphic where it was like they had like negative like 12 rushing yards or something like that. And it was just like, oh my god, like
yeah, I mean this
this
Titans
is
team is just
gross.
bad. Ryan Tannehill, he
I
had
could
his he
do.
had
I
his
could
year.
no. I'd be more than content if I didn't have to watch the Tennessee Titans the rest of the season. Like I'm
No,
good.
I'm saying
I'm good.
why DeAndre Hopkins went there. Like he says he wants to leave Arizona so we can go somewhere and compete, and then you go to the Tennessee Titans. But I mean, not to discredit the Browns too much. They played good. Deshaun Watson actually finally looked good. I think for like the first time in a Browns uniform, he actually showed some of those flashes of what we saw in Houston. Amari Cooper continues to do Amari Cooper things. You know, he had 116 yards and a touchdown. I mean, overall, Cleveland just kind of didn't really have to do too much aside from just stay out of their own way.
The best part of this game was Deshaun Watson throwing the ball like 15 yards backwards in a lateral that almost completely screwed them. Like that was the best part of this game. But no, you're right. I mean, Deshaun, yeah, 27 of 33, 289 and 2. I mean, the Titans secondary wasn't isn't that good at all. I mean, they're better run defense than they are pass defense. Amari almost had two. I think that one like tiptoe touchdown on the sideline. I think that may have gotten called back. So I mean, Amari almost had two touchdowns on the day. Um, I mean, their running game didn't look great. Tennessee does have one of the best run defenses in the
Yeah,
league. It
and
really,
they
really
obviously
didn't
you lose
matter.
Nick Chubb,
Yeah,
you're gonna
yeah.
take
I
a
mean,
hit.
I mean, I wonder how the usage will kind of even itself out with Kareem Hunt signing there. I mean, he only had 5 carries for 13 yards, but I wonder what that like. How much are they going to use Ford, Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, who they traded, I think, from New England, or they got from New England, and then Kareem Hunt. Like, I wonder how that's going to even itself out over time. But obviously, again, the loss of Nick Chubb didn't hurt them as much this game, just because of who they were facing. But no, this game was a stinker, and this sucked because I was an idiot, and I think it was like Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and I saw Titans for 3.5, and I bet it,
Ooh,
and it like as soon as it got to like 10-3, I was like, this is checked out. Like
yeah, yeah, it's over.
this is over. Like, just having them battle back. I mean, and then I wrote about it and in our overreactions post, like Cleveland does have one of the best defenses in the league, or at least I think they do. I mean, obviously through the first 3 weeks they faced the Bengals with the banged up Joe Burrow. Who'd they face again? Like, then they faced the Titans, and then I'm trying to remember who they faced. Oh, they faced the Steelers in week 2
Yeah,
on Monday night. And none of those 3 offenses are particularly special or great. But I mean, when Joe Burrow's not healthy, I mean, um, but like Cleveland, they like if you just look at like the advanced metrics, like their defense leads the league in EPA per play. They lead in success rate allowed. Like, they're one of the best teams in pressure rate and one of the best teams in sack rate. Like, they're getting after the quarterback, and they certainly got after the quarterback in this game. Um, Again, I think some of that's a byproduct of the offensive lines that they face. Like, again, the Titans might have the worst offensive line in the league, and I don't think that's an overreaction to say that.
no,
Uh, the Steelers don't have a great offensive line, and the Bengals' offensive line has usually been pretty shaky in the Joe Burrow era. And so, like, I think the Bengals and the Steelers have made improvements on the offensive line over time, but the Titans certainly haven't. And we saw that on Sunday. I mean, they sacked Tannehill 5 times. Miles Garrett had three and a
three
half
and a
sacks.
half. Well, I just love that clip that I saw of the Titans were like moving guys around to double team them. So like Miles
Yeah,
Garrett would be on like the right side of the line. They'd move the double team, and then Miles Garrett runs over to the opposite side of the line, and they bring
yeah.
those 2 guys with them. They were doing anything they could to put 2 or even 3 bodies on him. I mean, he was just
And
having his
that just
way.
opens up stuff for like Dalvin Tomlinson. That
Yep.
opens stuff up for Zadarius Smith, who's had a great start to the season. Like that, that opens up stuff for like some of their other pass rushers. Or I guess Dalvin Tomlinson's more of a run stopper than he is a pass rusher. But regardless, like, they're teeing off on whoever they're facing right now, and this defense just in general looks good. And I think they were without Greg Newsom on Sunday, if I can remember correctly. But like, they're teeing off. I think their linebackers have improved. I think their secondary's improved. But most importantly, like, this defensive line, they're just getting after the quarterback. And with this offensive line that Tennessee has, when you're playing from behind, it's tough to when you can't get any ground game going, when you can't string together any first downs, like, it's obviously just it's tough to watch and it's tough to endure because, again, like, if you can't put any sustainable drives, you're putting your defense on the field and you're putting that much stress on it to like at least get stops. And again, Cleveland's offense isn't world beating, but certainly not great,
Yeah, and I mean, I think
or
kind
it's
of
not terrible. I mean,
yeah, I think kind of like you said, you need to take it with a little grain of salt when it's the Titans, but the Browns offense did at least look to be a little bit more fluid this week, which I mean, I know, like I just said, it is against the Titans, but sure, as a fan, you'll still take it. At least getting to see that offense kind of fire on all cylinders, and now they're 2-1, so pretty good start to the season. But overall, was just not a very entertaining game,
no,
unless you were a Browns fan. But moving on to another
no,
game that really wasn't as entertaining, but I guess wasn't a complete blowout, was the Detroit Lions beating the Atlanta Falcons 20-6. This was a
another
very
stinker.
this was a very, I guess, Dan Campbell esque and also Atlanta Falcons esque game. It was just grinding it out and just throwing haymakers. And I mean, the Lions came out on top, and I mean, my only takeaway from this game was that the Lions are a pretty dang good football team. I mean, the Falcons, obviously, everyone knows how they're going to win football games. It's going to be running the ball and keeping the ball on the ground, winning the time of possession game. And the Lions just really didn't let them do that. I mean, Bijan Robinson never was really able to get going, only 10 carries for 33 yards. Algier, 7 carries for 12 yards. I mean, this Detroit Lions defensive line, their linebackers, I mean, really came to play today, or not today, really came to play on Sunday, and just made it impossible for the Falcons to really move the ball at all. Because I mean, once you force them to kind of focus on passing and kind of make them pass, I think is usually when their offense becomes less inconsistent, which is crazy considering the weapons they have.
It didn't even feel like they were trying to get Bijan involved much, or at least as much as I would anticipate them in a game like this. Like even though they were down like 10 to 17 points throughout most of that game, or at least throughout most of the final 3 quarters. It just like even though you're down, it felt like they put a lot on Ritter's shoulders again because I mean, there's not a game where you want him to have 38 pass attempts. No disrespect,
Yeah.
but again, Detroit was able to pin their ears back a little bit once they got that lead, and it felt like they went away from what they do. And it's not like they were down like 21 points or something like that.
Yeah,
They
it
were
wasn't
only
an insurmountable.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't an insurmountable lead. But then again, like when Younghoe Koo misses a field goal, then you're not able to put drives together after that, or at least sustainable drives. That I mean, because they were eating up plenty of clock in that fourth quarter. When obviously you want to operate at a quicker tempo, just considering they were down again a couple scores. But even like in that second and third quarter, it didn't feel like they were involving Bijan and Algier as much as I think you would want them to do, even though again they're already trailing. But then again, like credit to Detroit for stopping them in those opportunities, to making sure they put them in those long third down and distance situations. Like you want to put them, you don't want to put them in an easy spot, especially when you have. I think I undersold the Detroit defense a little bit this season. Like I didn't think they were that great. They did make some improvements in the secondary, obviously with like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's now out for the season, but like they made some improvements there. But then like you're right, their front seven really came to play on Sunday, and obviously, I mean, I was interested to see what the usage would look like for Jahmyr Gibbs, and since David Montgomery's out, and I mean, Jahmyr looked pretty good. I mean, 17 carries, 80 yards. He only had 1 catch for 2 yards, but I thought that was interesting. The touchdown that Goff threw to Sam Laporta. I don't think any player's been more wide open ever.
Yeah. Talk about a busted coverage.
Yeah. So obviously you don't want that if you're Atlanta. But no, this game was another stinker, just in terms of like, again,
watchability.
Like it feels like we've gotten a lot of that. Again, we're going to get to more of it.
Yeah, I mean the Lions just kind of took the lead early on, and it seems like they just never really let up. Falcons weren't able to play their brand of football, and when they aren't able to do that, they don't have really the roster or playmakers especially defensively, to kind of negate that, then make up for that. I think we saw that on Sunday. I mean, the offense just looked very, very lackluster. Their defense wasn't, horrible. I mean, it wasn't like the Lions were just marching up and down the field at a crazy rate. But, Falcons offense, I think, still has some fine tuning to do. I mean, relying on the run isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think they're almost getting to a point where they're becoming dependent on it.
That
was never really a good thing in the NFL.
Yeah, when you're no disrespect intended, but like Desmond Ridder isn't the quarterback that you necessarily want to
force to win you the game or put the game on his shoulders.
He's just not there yet, and maybe he might not get there at all. I'm not sure, but at least at this stage in his young career, he hasn't been a quarterback who's proven that you could rely on him in those situations when you're down 7, 10, 14 points, whatever the case is. So they get that's why I'm saying like it at least earlier in the game, it felt like they went away from Bijan when they didn't have to yet, even though he wasn't super successful to begin with. They could do like screen passes or try to get him in a swing pass or whatever. Just get him in space a little bit more, see what he can
Yeah,
do,
definitely the kind of guy you just
get him
want
in
to
rhythm.
get the ball into his hands.
He's their best playmaker. Like, I mean,
It's the
the
reason
Drake
they
London
picked
stock
him.
is in the garbage. Um, and obviously the Kyle Pitts stock is also like treading towards the garbage if it's
Well, if
not
you're
done.
in dynasty leagues and you have Kyle Pitts, just hold on to him for when he eventually leaves Atlanta, then actually goes somewhere where they'll use a tight end.
Listen, man, Johnny was getting targets.
But yeah, overall, it was just kind of another one of those boring games. Didn't really see it too much on Red Zone. Both teams are now 2-1, which I'm sure is both teams. I think would say if they were 2-1 at this point in the season, they would take that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure Falcons fans aren't happy with the loss, but still in a much better spot and in a very winnable division.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of their division, moving on to our next game, we have the New Orleans Saints dropping an absolute heartbreaker to the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. It was a game that was all Saints everything for 3 quarters, and then Derek Carr got hurt, and then apparently the entire rest of the team just forgot how to play football. I didn't think a quarterback getting hurt would ever affect a team's defense, or at least affect it this much, but it was it was just kind of uncanny seeing how quickly it all fell apart for the Saints as soon as Derek Carr got hurt.
And it's not even like their offense wasn't completely dominant, but like there was
Yeah,
some
they
missed
were up
fourth down
17
opportunities
points.
for Green Bay early in that game that kind of shot themselves in the foot. Like they had that one, I want to say it was like fourth and short, and they did like I can't remember if it was like a reverse, but then they threw it back to Jordan Love, who it was like almost like a double reverse pass or something,
Oh yeah, and he slipped.
and he slipped and I want to say he tried to throw it to Musgrave, but I can't remember exactly
Yeah, I
who.
think that's who it was.
But like little things like that, and they were I think in plus territory when that happened. And so just little things like that, like kind of shot themselves in the foot. Felt like when I was watching this game, like every other play was a penalty on Green Bay, which that's obviously not ideal. I think they finished with like 10 or 11 total penalties. I think New Orleans finished with a lot too, but especially when you're like, I think early in that game, there was just a lot of unfortunate penalties going Green Bay's way, not saying they weren't deserved, but they were just kind of shooting themselves in the foot and putting themselves in a
Self-inflicted
bad spot.
wounds.
Yeah, self-inflicted wounds. Then they again, you're right. After that Derek Carr injury, they were able to get some rhythm a little bit. They were able to get stops on defense. Rashawn Gary was quite impactful in that game. He kind of made his presence known. I mean, it didn't help that also Green Bay was without Bakhtiari. I think Elton Jenkins, Watson, and Aaron Jones. So again, that's obviously not
Yeah, they
ideal.
were battered.
Yeah. Um, but again, they found some rhythm in that second half. Jordan Love looked much
Really
better in
more
that
so just
fourth
in the
quarter than he
fourth
did in that game.
quarter than the
Yeah,
second half. They
yeah,
still hadn't scored at all in the third quarter. All of their points came in the fourth.
right.
And shout out to you said Christian Watson was hurt, but Packers
Yeah.
don't need Christian Watson. They got a young goat by the name of Romeo Dubs who attended UNR, baby.
Again, I just wish I hope he gets traded to any other team, and so he doesn't have to don that
Yeah, that
disgusting
that one catch
green and
he
gold.
had like on the sideline where like it was basically in his fingertips. I didn't think he caught it like live. But yeah, I
Listen,
mean,
Romeo Dubs, man.
I'll root for I'll root for Romeo any chance I get. I mean, I'm not a Packers fan by any means, but anytime I see him do good, it's nice. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Love, kind of like you said, just kind of got clicking, found the rhythm in the fourth quarter. The entire offense kind of just completely shifted a gear in the fourth quarter, and the Saints just kind of seemed to be at a loss. I mean, both offensively and defensively. I mean, Winston wasn't even like bad. I mean, like 10 for 16, 101 yards. no touchdowns, no picks. Like for a backup coming in spur of the moment, that's not bad, but I think it was just kind of clear that the little rhythm that the Saints did have and were able to get going throughout the first part of that game just kind of dissipated. And I think that kind of transferred to the defense, and they just, you know, all of a sudden, stopped getting pressure on Love, which I think played into him being more comfortable.
Didn't help that New
Some
Orleans' offensive line
breakdowns.
also stinks.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just a collapse. I mean, 18 points
Mm-hmm.
in the fourth quarter. Definitely a tough pill to swallow for Saints fans who were hoping to start the season 3-0. Had it within grasp.
What's their point differential? Like it's like there would have been like 3-0 with a point differential of okay, so they lost they won their first
Yeah,
game by
I can
one
check right
point.
now.
It was 4 heading into the game.
Yeah, yeah. They won their first game by 1, the next game by 3.
Oh man, I mean, listen, now they're 2-1 with a 3-point differential. There you go, or plus
Yeah,
3-point differential.
I mean, all you can do is win. Win's a win in the National Football League.
Yeah,
But we say a win's a win, but getting into our next game is proof that not all losses are quite the same or made the same. And that is because we are getting to the Miami Dolphins putting an absolute clinic against what looked like a JV football team for a bad school. I mean, yeah, the Dolphins beat the Broncos 70-20. I mean, the game was over halfway into the second quarter. I just kept watching because every 3 seconds this game was on red zone, and it was Devon Archain, 50-yard touchdown. Raheem Mostert, 40-yard touchdown. Tyreek Hill, 30-yard touchdown. Raheem Mostert, 40-yard touchdown. Devon Archain, 50-yard touchdown. I'm just like, holy, like, god dang, man. Like, somebody get a stop. And it just looked so easy for Miami too. I mean, it at one point it just looked like that Mike McDaniel was legit just like, all right, whatever, just go out there and do whatever the hell you want, and it was working every single time. The Dolphins were clearly in their bag with it in this game. There was that one Tua like no look shovel pass he did. I mean, their offense right now is just firing on absolutely all cylinders. And I mean, if this run game can be even half as good as it was on Sunday, I mean, this Dolphins team is going to be absolutely scary. I mean, Devon Archain's not going to give you 203 yards and 2 touchdowns every week, but I think between him and Mostert, they're showing that they are going to be a more than capable backfield. And they still have Jeff Wilson, who's supposed to come back, but at this point, I don't even know where they'll fit him in.
I mean, yeah, Achain looked incredible. But just again, that entire offense, just the way that McDaniel's able to scheme up the half motions, the end arounds, get lead blockers in front of these guys, get these guys in space, and then obviously scheme up. I mean, they had 726 yards and 70 points without Jalen Waddle.
Yeah,
Like
without Jalen Waddle, that's
Jalen
a
Waddle did
scary
not play
part.
in this game. Like I think that's gonna just go. I think that's like people have forgotten that.
You couldn't even
Um,
tell.
right, exactly. But like at one point, Tua was 16 of 16 in this game.
Yeah, with like
He finished
200 yards.
23 of 26, so he's obviously on the downslope. No.
He's a bust.
Yeah. He's treading more in that direction. The only direction to go
They
is
didn't
down.
break the record of 73 points, so
I mean, yeah, they could have scored more. Like McDaniel, I credit to him for not going for it. I mean,
well,
he
that's
mentioned
Tua's
after
fault.
the
He's a
game that it was
bust.
karma. I
Yeah,
don't know how much that. Okay, like okay. I mean, obviously they were scoring. They scored 70 points already, so I don't know like what. There's like you're already disrespecting your opponent when it comes to like running up the score. Even though again, like when you get Achain in space for 60 yards or whatever, like what is he just going to run out of bounds? Like that's not
yeah.
going
I mean,
to
it's also partly the Broncos' fault. I mean,
happen.
it
Yeah,
just looked like they had given up at one point. And like there was a point in this game where it seemed like very small, and it was like for a moment when the Broncos like had a chance. I think it was like 21.
0-0.
Yeah. No, it was like 21-10 or something like that. Like the Broncos had just scored the drive before to make it like a 10 or 11 point game or something like that. And then they got a stop on the next possession. So I was watching, I was like, okay, the Broncos get the ball back here, go down, score with a field goal or touchdown. I'm like, maybe it's an interesting game. And then that's when the onslaught really started, where it was 50-yard touchdown after 50-yard touchdown, and it just looked like the Broncos had given up.
Yeah. And like again, the fact that they're able to scheme all this stuff up, because it's like again, like even without Waddle, I mean Tyreek is open all the time.
Someone's open
Most
every
Mostert's
time.
open. Like Mostert, like even though he wasn't in space a whole lot, he's open all the time. Like
Yeah,
Robbie Chosen um
he had a
is
wide
open.
open touchdown.
Like they're so open every single play. And like I know there's probably, I mean not probably now because obviously in lieu of what happened, but I remember there are like two people who don't like him, who are like all of his they're like they kind of blame the receivers being open on like him, like yeah, he's not throwing any like to any contest windows where it's like, do you want to fucking have him throw it to someone who's double covered? Like what?
Pull a
Like
Dak
what?
Prescott.
Yeah, like what do you like what okay, like all right, why is that a thing? But no. No, he was incredible. This offense is just a machine. I don't remember, I think, seeing a 70-point game in the NFL ever. Again, they were 3 point, I think 2 points away from tying it, 3 points away from breaking it.
Yeah, I think it
I
sounds
don't
right.
I can't remember when the last time, I know the stats been thrown out there, but I can't remember the last time someone scored 70 in a game. But it like almost felt like I was watching a
Yeah, I
college
think it was
game.
like a
Like,
60s or something.
yeah.
Something weird.
Like I don't remember like again. This was like a college game. Like this felt like Oregon versus Colorado or like whatever the case is. Where I mean, obviously Oregon didn't score 70 points, but like you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was
Um,
just domination from start to
yeah,
finish.
yeah, and like you just don't see this in an NFL atmosphere again. Like the Dolphins now have 130 points in 3 games. I remember I saw a stat. I think it was Ben Solak who writes for the Ringer. He said, I think they've had 36 drives this season. The Dolphins have, or it was somewhere around that number, and they scored 17 touchdowns. And so like nearly he
Like half
equated
their
it to like
drives,
flipping a coin. Like you
and if
have
they're
a
going to
fifty
score a
percent chance
touchdown.
of landing on it. Like you you have a 50% chance of like scoring a touchdown as almost as often like as you're flipping a coin. Like it's just insane. It's just insane what they're doing right now. And they're like the Broncos. I don't even know what happened to their defense because like just a couple
They're
of years ago, this
broken.
team was known for having like a pretty solid defense. But um, I think again, I think since Fangio left, it obviously hasn't come into fruition. Like again, you have 35-point score on you, or it was 35 against Washington, which Washington's not a great offense. They're not a terrible one, but um, I mean, this weekend wasn't good for them, but like 35 points, that's a lot of points at home. And then obviously having that doubled against, oh,
Sorry, I accidentally clicked something. Trying to fix it. I don't know what I did.
like having that doubled the following week, literally,
Yeah,
uh, to 70. It's just wild. And again, like the Dolphins this is like a must watch team just because their offense is so much fun to watch.
yeah,
Because again, it's just like McDaniel's ripping clouds and putting up 70 burgers on teams. Like this team is nuts.
yeah. I mean, the Broncos are broken. Dolphins broke them. Dolphins are, as of now, I'm sure, a Super Bowl favorite, rightfully so. They're 3-0 and are showing no signs of slowing down.
None.
But finally, well, I guess not our first good game, but we make it to our first game that actually captivated me and kept my attention. Unfortunately for you, Matt, didn't quite end how you would have wanted, but that
You're
is
doing
the
this to me right now, man.
but
I gotta take my medicine. All right, I'll do it.
that is the
I'll do
Los
it.
Angeles Chargers defeating the Vikings 28-24, getting their first win of the season and putting the Vikings in a very, very unfortunate 0-3. One of the better 0-3 teams I can remember
Yeah.
in recent history. They've had a pretty brutal start or a pretty rough start to the schedule or start to the season. And this game was just, I mean, it was a slugfest pretty much all the way throughout. Kirk Cousins and Justin Herbert both basically throwing the ball 50 times. I mean, both teams were just airing it out on biblical levels. Keenan Allen, I mean, his
Oh
stat
my
line
God.
looks
Yeah.
fake. 18 receptions, 215 yards, and a passing touchdown just because why not? I mean, it was just somehow he was always open, and I just didn't understand it. He's always been a PPR merchant for fantasy, but I mean, especially once Mike Williams got out, it was just Herbert was drop back, throw it to 13 every time. Didn't matter where
Yep.
he was lined up, who was guarding him. He was just like, I'm throwing it to Keenan Allen, and he's gonna catch it.
Yep. I mean, like, I can tell you why. When you blitz like every single play, 5, 6, 7 guys, and you leave 4 or 5 guys in coverage with the suboptimal secondary, yeah, you'll get open.
Who could have seen that coming?
You'll get open. Like, it's very funny in contrast how different Ed Donatel versus Brian Flores is. And like you, this one that I don't think that's the first time you've heard me say that. I think I had mentioned that week 1 kind of when we did that episode. And I'll probably mention it more throughout the season. Every single play, Brian Flores just felt like was sending the house, and it was just like, and unfortunately, it wasn't getting home because again, Justin Herbert went 40 of 47 for 405 yards and 3 touchdowns. But
Yes, clearly something wasn't
they tried to
working.
make him uncomfortable. Didn't always work. I know I tweeted something like early in the first half. I was like, man, like they're really dialing up the blitz. It looks like it's affecting their timing. And literally from that point after was not
Nope.
at all affecting Justin Herbert at all. Because again, like I remember I looked at it this morning when Sports Ref, and they do like they have like their own blitz metric, like blitz percentage metric. And I think Minnesota, they've blitzed like 63% of the time or something like that, which is just a crazy amount. Like the next highest team was like the Giants at like 53%. And even that was like a pretty substantial gap from second to third. Like they're blitzing so much and yet they're not getting home. And it's just like, it's so goddamn infuriating sometimes where it's like, I like it because I like the aggressiveness instead of just like rushing 4 and having.
I was going to say last year, you guys like were probably towards the bottom of the league.
Yeah. Right. I think we were one of the last or like dead last. Because they would just send 4 every play and like expect them to get home, and it's like
basically play prevent every play.
Yeah, and they were just letting everything go underneath them. And then this year, it's like we're gonna at least try to send the house, and maybe just once, we'll get home. And they haven't really gotten home that much. I mean, Danielle Hunter's been good. I love Ivan Pace Jr., who was an undrafted linebacker that they got this year from Cincinnati. He's been good, but like everyone else is they just can't get home. And it's not like the Chargers don't have a bad offensive line per se, but when the opposing quarterback is going 40 or 47 with multiple good pass catchers, that's tough. But this Vikings offense, I mean, they've been good, but like I think I'm gonna rip my hair out. I'm losing hair. Obviously, I got a haircut since the last time I've been on, but I'm losing hair with how often this team's fumbling the ball. Like I just can't. 7 lost fumbles in 2 games. I think that's tied for the second most since like 2000. At least over that time, they have 9 turnovers, and that's what's so infuriating about this 0-3 start is that they've had 9 turnovers. I think the majority of them have come in plus territory. Madison almost lost. Yeah, I mean, they finished with 2 turnovers, 1 fumble lost, and 1 interception on the last play of the game. But Madison also had another fumble loss, so that almost was 8. But no, watching this team turn the ball over as much as they have, and it leading to, I think, 20 opposing points. Like when you lose your first game by 3, when you lose your second game by
Yeah,
6.
how tight the margin of victory has
Yeah, like
been.
and then when you lose this game by 4, like it's so maddening. And obviously, like again, the Chargers are a team that likes to piss away games. And they almost did it again by Brandon Staley going for it on his own 25 with like a minute and a half left. And it's just like, wait, what are you doing? Why aren't you punting the
Yeah,
ball? And they run like this bad fullback dive just right into the center. And it was just like, this is, and they did not get it. It was just like, wait, what? And Minnesota just can't convert off that. Like they converted on a fourth down with 41 seconds left, and then they just let 30 seconds run off the clock for no reason at all. I'm like sitting there and screaming at my TV, like spike the ball. Like, why are we? So I think they had only like one timeout left, or no, wait, they didn't have any timeouts left.
yeah, I don't think
And I was
they
like,
did.
spike the ball, and they didn't spike the ball, and then Kirk throws the pick. But just such a maddening game, and we knew this game was going to be so infuriating for one side because it's the Chargers and the Vikings. But
Both teams that just love to piss away wins.
this 0-3 start, like this could easily be 2-1 or even 3-0, but 2-1 at the very least. And now they're 0-3. We know 0-3 is a death wish for teams in the
Yeah,
NFL.
and not
Because,
only are they 0-3, but in like their next 4 games,
yeah,
they have the Chiefs and the 49ers. And I mean, you obviously saw the overreaction that I sent in. If
yeah.
anyone has already read the article, they saw it. But there's a certain team over in New York that I think is going to be wanting to pick the phone up and make a call for a certain Kirk Cousins. And at this point, if I'm the Vikings, I don't think it's necessarily a horrible idea. If you're potentially 2-6 at that point, or 1-5
Yeah.
at at that point, you maybe just cut your loss. I mean, it's Kirk's last year. Cut your losses, trade him. You can end up with a top draft pick, just loaded quarterback class this year. I don't know. I don't think the Vikings will do it. I don't think they have the balls to do it.
I mean, like it's also hard for the Jets situation because I actually proposed the same thing I asked my dad this over the weekend. I was like, should they do it?
I don't think the windows are aligned right now.
Well,
Like,
even then, like I don't know if money would be the issue because again, like they traded for Aaron Rodgers, and like Kirk Cousins, I think is cheaper than Aaron Rodgers in terms of like his salary. I'm like, yeah, it's obviously 20, 25, 30 more million that you're adding onto the books. Um, but you already did it for one player. Like, why wouldn't you do it for another if you really think you're in contention? Um, but also, I think the biggest question would just be draft capital because it's
yeah,
like they traded that pick away. I don't know what the rules for that would be because again, like Rodgers would have to play. I think it was like 65% of the snaps or less, so it would turn into a second round pick. So does that mean they just don't have a first round pick anymore? Like, what exactly can they still trade that first round pick? Because again, like I think that's what Minnesota would command for Cousins. Maybe they would command a third round pick or a second round pick for a guy who's only going to be there for half a year or however long. But I don't think Minnesota and like even outside of the Jets, like even outside of that conundrum, like I don't know if there's many quarterbacks like knocking the door down for a quarterback who's making 30 plus million. Like I don't think that's the case, and so I don't think Minnesota's going to do it anyways. But again, that's like the fact that we have to like ask that question
I mean, it was just an
and move the
overreaction.
start where they could like be 2-1 because they've lost their first 3 combined games by 12 points or 13 points, whatever it is. Like it's just so infuriating. I mean, they do have Carolina this next week. A part of me does fear what Andy Dalton, the corpse of Andy Dalton will do this defense. They just blitz him every time, but I have no idea. They do have the Chiefs. Maybe Taylor Swift can grant us some luck. I don't know. Um, they have the Bears. Honest to God, if they don't beat the Bears, they always lose in Chicago. But if they don't beat the Bears this year, that's going to be tough. The
That's when
Niners,
you really do tear it
Falcons,
down.
Saints, like they have a manageable stretch. It's not like the worst in the world, but
Yeah,
losing these 3 games or at least losing to Tampa and losing to the Chargers. Um, I don't think many people expected them to at least hang with Philly. I didn't, but like at least losing to the Buccaneers and then just the Chargers in the way they lost and just turning the ball over every which way. Like this team is, they've been one of the better offenses in the league. Like Kirk Cousins leads the league in passing. Um, when they get in the red zone, they typically score, and when they don't score, they're fumbling the ball away. Like it's just annoying. But
Yeah, I mean it's been a lot of tough pills to swallow for the Vikings. All these one-score games after last season coming back down to the mean. But
0 and
make
4 in one score games and over their last 4 games, including the
yeah,
playoffs, after being 11 and 0.
you always come back to the means, how it works in the
Yep.
NFL. But making our way through the rest of these 10 a.m. games, we got a couple more stinkers that we can just spend little time on because they're not really worth our time. Now, the Bills absolutely destroying the Commanders 37-3. I picked Josh Allen over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Thought that would be a lock, but God evidently hates me, so that didn't happen. But I mean, Sam Howell, he's looked good. He's looked good, or he had looked good the first couple weeks, and this was, I think, kind of the game where he truly looked like an actual rookie or an inexperienced quarterback. Just a lot of bad decisions, bad throws. He just seemed rushed a lot. They got down early, and he just kind of looked a little bit like a deer in headlights at times, which is normal. I mean, I think the Commanders were 2-0, but they were probably towards the bottom of teams that were still 2-0. Yeah, I don't think something like that was sustainable for this Commanders team. I mean, their defense is usually what's going to be what keeps them in games, but Bills just kind of had their way. Josh Allen looked good. The run game looked good. Their defense was suffocating, and overall, it was just a real boring blowout game.
Yeah, this game. I mean, there was a couple times throughout this game where they were able to get Washington was able to get in plus territory, and they were in position to put points up on the board. Like I know they had a turnover on downs when it was fourth and goal, fourth and short, and there was another where they were in plus territory, but I think they were either like near the red zone, and a couple different times they had a like just he threw a couple bad interceptions. We had 4 interceptions on the day, one pick six by AJ Epinesa. But like, if you don't convert in those situations, like against this Bills team, that's almost just a death wish.
Yeah, I mean, this game
And
was over
yeah,
after the first quarter.
yeah, and again, like this Bills defense was very, very good. Again, they had the 4 interceptions. Terrell Bernard had a couple sacks. Epineza had that pick six. Like this defense really came to play, but there were situations in this kind of mucky weather where the Commanders were able to put up points. And obviously, when you I think it was like 10-0 when they had the fourth and short turnover on downs. But
They were able to move the ball a decent amount. The Commanders were able
yeah,
to
that's what I said. Like they
they
were
would
at
move the
points they were able
ball,
to
and
move
then
the
Sam
ball.
Howell would throw a Stevie, or
Yeah, like
the Nissiki
that's kind of
version.
what I'm trying to say. Yeah, like they were able to move the ball on them in certain spots, but when you end up with 0 points, I mean, at least
Three. Yeah,
they
they
ended up with
saved
three, but
face.
like when you on some of these possessions, when you end up with 0 points after getting in plus territory, putting yourself in a good
It's just
spot, like
demoralizing.
it's demoralizing.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think too many people were necessarily surprised the Bills won this game. Maybe they were surprised that it was this bad. I know I definitely was, but our next game was another one that, or was a game that may have surprised a few people. Definitely surprised me, and that was the Houston Texans dismantling the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, this was another kind of game that really just from start to finish, the Texans dominated. I mean, they're on the road in Jacksonville, and CJ Stroud and that Texans offense just kind of looked like they were the most comfortable or at least Stroud looked the most comfortable he had looked all year, in my opinion, and just kind of diced up this Jacksonville defense. And Tank Dell, the rookie, He had a big game, had that 68-yard touchdown. And I mean, Stroud just so far has looked like probably the best rookie quarterback, I think, out of, Young, and between Young, Richardson, and Stroud. I mean, obviously Richardson's hurt right now, but Stroud has yet to really look bad. And given the
Mhm.
situation he was going into, I think a lot of people expected him to. But I mean, he easily outperformed Trevor Lawrence on Sunday.
And I think Trevor was subject to a few bad drops. Like I know Calvin Ridley had a few drop passes in this game. I want to say like Kirk maybe had a couple too. But no, I remember coming on here after week one and being like, dude, I don't hate what Stroud did in week one against Baltimore. And Sunday felt like a little vindication. Uh, 20 of 30, 280 and two. Again, you mentioned Tank Dell, 5 catches, 145 yards in that touchdown. He had that 68 yarder. Um, he's spreading the ball around. He looked comfortable in the pocket. And as long as that line is just able to keep him upright, I think they're in a good spot. But like the special teams as well, like they had a blocked field goal. They had I don't even know if it was like a fullback or a tight end or like what position that guy was, but they kicked that guy had that kick return for the touchdown. Like their special teams was dominant too, and I think McManus also just missed an additional field goal outside of that block kick. And so the Jags won, or I mean not the Jags, the Texans won in really all three phases.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, it showed kind of
yeah,
like we were saying, they just pretty much from start to finish were winning, and it never really seemed like Jacksonville ever really had a chance or really got close.
yeah,
So, I mean, yeah, that was definitely a very impressive game from Stroud. Definitely surprising one from the Texans as a whole. I wouldn't have pegged them to score 37 points this early in the season at any point, but Stroud
and
seems
I
to be
like what the
proving me
Texans
wrong.
did defensively. I think D'Amico has those
Yeah,
guys playing.
yeah, especially with no Stingley
Yeah,
right now too. That defense still
yeah.
definitely looked impressive. Definitely gave Lawrence some troubles. Both teams now 1-2. Jaguars haven't had, I think, the start to the season them or their fans were hoping. Texans, I think, more or less are about where they thought they were. Better than 0-3, which is where I think a lot of people pegged them being at this point.
Encouraging, very encouraging from what we've seen
Yeah,
from
I'd be
them
I-
to
I'd be
some extent.
excited if I was a Texans fan, I would be at least a little optimistic. Out of the
Now the
Texans,
Jags got to go to London.
yeah, I'd have some reason to watch games now this year. But moving on is to our next game is a game that I don't think anybody wanted to watch, not even fans of either team. That was the Patriots beating the Jets
Ah,
15-10. Another one of these games that was just extremely boring. If you were watching Red Zone, you didn't really catch too much of this game, and that's because you didn't really miss too much. It was a very Bill Belichick-esque game, just Patriots game of just kind of not doing anything crazy, not too many big shot plays or anything like that. Just keep the ball on the ground, run the ball as effectively as they can, and then just hope Mac Jones doesn't make too many mistakes and lose you the game. And more or less, that's what happens. And I mean, the Jets right now are just the Jets. I mean, when you're dealing with Zach Wilson as your starting QB, you're going into every single matchup at a disadvantage. And it's just going to be difficult to try and game plan a victory in that case. But to the Jets' credit, they kept it close pretty much the entire game. The defense, unsurprisingly, looked good, but I mean, yeah, I think panic is starting to kind of settle in for this Jets team, more so because not just because they're 1-2 right now, but just because I think like the fans know that this team can be good with the right quarterback. Like the defense has shown you, I think enough in this has shown you what you need to see to be like this is a team that can compete. I mean, heck, you beat the Bills with Zach Wilson as your QB. It's a pretty good early statement win. And now it's just every week you're having to go out there and watch Zach Wilson drain the life out of your team and just miss every single throw and make Garrett Wilson look like a average receiver.
Well, like even then, if you're the Jets defense and you don't force 4 turnovers or whatever it was in week 1 and have those just costly avoidable mistakes from Josh Allen, like if you don't force those, you're being put in a bad spot.
Yeah,
And it's not like Mac wasn't terrific either. He was.
No.
Both offenses were brutal. I mean, I know the Pats had a safety that got them to 15, and yet the Jets almost still like won this game. I mean,
Yeah, the Hail Mary was.
They had like a puncher's chance. I mean, their ground game is gross, and that I think they're loading the box and making Zach Wilson beat them, which is a fair strategy. I mean, Christian Barmore and Matthew Judon both had very good games. Obviously, Christian Gonzalez, their rookie cornerback, he did a good job shading Wilson.
He's been great all year.
Yeah. And so it's like New England's defense isn't bad. They have a solid defense, but their offense isn't great. I mean, Zeke and Ramondre had good outings on Sunday, but it's just been like an ugly offensive output, it feels like, for New England through these first 3 games. And like, obviously Mac isn't as bad as Zach Wilson is, but he's still not great. And like the Jets have a very good defense. And so they're kind of keeping them in that game. But they weren't able to force key turnovers that they were able to force in week 1 when they got that victory.
Yeah, I mean, for right now, with the way this Jets team is, they kind of just have to rely on teams more or less beating themselves than them actually beating a team, which usually is not a good recipe for success in the NFL. And I think we're kind of seeing that. And I think it's going to cause the Jets to definitely start picking up the phone and calling anybody they can to bring in a quarterback that isn't Zach Wilson. Because I think it's clear that Zach Wilson just is not it, at least as an NFL QB.
We've known this too. Like, it's not.
He can go bang all the hot moms he wants, but he's not going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I feel.
Do you think he's
going to much longer?
Do you think he's going to try to hit up Travis Kelce for some Taylor Swift this weekend?
Probably. I mean, at this point, if I'm him, why not? I know I'm not going to be a starter for too much longer. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Taylor Swift would do it.
We'll get to that game later.
Indeed, we will. But our next game was another one that was a bit surprising. That was the Indianapolis Colts, or should I say, Matt Gay beating.
Yeah, I was going to say MVP Matt Gay.
Yeah, Matt Gay beating the Baltimore Ravens by a score of 22-19. I mean, what was it? He made, what was it, 5 or 4 50-plus yard kicks?
I think it was 4, but that's like a record. So
yeah. Does it say like kicking?
I want to say
he went 5 for 5, but okay. I don't think all of them were. It's not telling me how far.
Let me look up how far these were.
But I mean, yeah, Matt Gay was just absolutely. He was. I mean, the best kicker in the NFL was in attendance for that game. 4, okay, yeah. I mean, the best kicker.
First one was 31 yards.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, the best kicker in arguably NFL history was in attendance, and Matt Gay just told him to hold my beer and said, "Watch this." And I mean, Tucker had what was that? Like that 62-yarder that was right down the middle, but he just didn't put enough on it.
Yeah. See, it was either 61 or 62, but yeah, it looked good from how far it was down the middle, but not.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely right down the middle, but
looked on target.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Matt Gay, all jokes aside, this Colts offense definitely didn't look bad. Gardner Minshew, I think, came in and did what you'd expect Gardner Minshew to do.
Minshew mania.
Yep, 227 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Obviously, I loved him on the Eagles. Everyone's always loved Minshew. He's just kind of a baller. He just goes out there, and when he's out there, that he's giving you He's given you every ounce of heart that he's got. And I mean, he did enough for the Colts on Sunday to not lose. He didn't turn the ball over. Didn't seem like he took too many sacks, too many big costly sacks from what I can remember.
They
Or
got him like 4 or 5 times, but
oh yeah, Kyle Hamilton. I forgot. Kept going absolutely
yeah,
crazy. It wasn't even like defensive line sacks. It was Kyle Hamilton coming in every time. But yeah, I mean, the Colts defense also, I think, did a great job. They overall limited Lamar Jackson, I think, as much as you can. He still had 14 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns,
I was gonna
which I
say
think,
not on the
which
ground.
you know, which is crazy. We're saying that for in terms of limiting, but I think in the passing, they didn't really let him get going too much. I know his numbers looked pretty good: 22 31, 202 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, but it just kind of seemed like another one of those games where he wasn't really able to fully get going and stretch the ball down the field. I mean, when you look at the receivers, no receiver had over 50 yards. I think it just kind of paints the picture for what the offense has kind of been like for the Ravens. It seems like it's a lot of dink and dunk when they are passing, and then they're kind of having to rely on these big Lamar Jackson runs, so these
I
big,
mean, the
run
conditions
plays.
weren't great. The conditions weren't great. It was pretty rainy over there in Baltimore. But I mean, yeah, you're right. Especially after their first drive, they couldn't muster up anything like formidable. It felt like for throughout most of the game that wasn't Lamar Jackson running the ball for 10, 15 yards. But I was impressed with what Minshew was able to do offensively, but like Zach Moss.
Yep, I had him in
Zach
fantasy.
Moss was a beast, dude. 30 carries, 122 yards, uh, 2 catches for
Uh,
23 yards
and a touchdown
and a
receiving.
touchdown, where he kind of had to like tiptoe his way in. Not tiptoe his way in, but like kind of manage where he was at on the sideline. But no, he was incredible. I mean, he looked explosive. He looked strong. He looked like he was getting downhill pretty easily. Um, I completely forgot until they. I don't know when he signed, but I remember when I was watching this game, I completely forgot that Melvin Ingram was on the Ravens, or not Melvin Ingram, Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I totally forgot too until they called his name on a catch or something. I was like, oh, that's where he signed.
Yeah, but no, this was a little bit of a not a stinker, but I mean, obviously, yeah, it was the Matt Gay Bowl.
Yeah,
He was awesome. He was tremendous. MVP of the game for sure.
100%. I mean, definitely a bit of a surprising score. Not the most entertaining game. Did come down to the wire, but
The
yeah, if you
Ravens
had
also were missing 7 starters too. If I think,
when
if I
aren't
can
they?
remember correctly.
When
So
aren't the Ravens missing 5+ starters on both sides of the ball?
yeah,
It's unfortunate, but whoever's in charge of their training staff or medical department just clearly needs to get fired because something hasn't been working for quite some time now. But yeah, Matt Gay, if you had him in fantasy,
you probably won.
congratulations to you. Yep. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that concludes all the 10 a.m. games. As we make our way to the Seahawks Panthers, which I believe was the first, or was one of the first of the 1 o'clock windows. There were only 3 games. Yep. The Seahawks defeated the Panthers by a score of 37-27 in the 1 o'clock window. Seahawks move on to, or advance to 2-1. Panthers 0-3. The big story here was no Bryce Young. First overall pick was hurt, but Andy Dalton came in and threw the ball 58 times to the tune of 361 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he looked a little bit like good old vintage Cincinnati Red Rifle, and I personally love seeing it.
No, yeah, I mean, you could tell. I don't think like Bryce Young's thrown for over like 450 or not 450, like 150 yards, 160 yards. He's been around kind of that area over his first 2 games, but then obviously Andy Dalton, the veteran quarterback, comes in And he just, yeah, 58 pass attempts for 361 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like Adam Thielen looked like prime Adam Thielen with
Yeah,
he was getting the ball.
11. DJ
11 for
Chark even looked good.
145 and one. Like, I mean, they still lost by 10, but it's still like very funny, like how they were. I mean, obviously they were down for most of this game, so you wanted to air it out a little bit, and they couldn't get the run game going, which isn't really unsurprising for them. But the fact he threw it 58 times is just still nuts. I mean, again, yeah, that's the red rifle for you. And I mean, Andy Dalton's like, he's not some bad backup
Oh
quarterback.
no,
Like
he's probably one of the
he's
better
solid.
backups you could have at this point.
Yeah, he's solid. Like he's probably not a guy that you want starting 4, 5, 6 games in a season, but he's every once in a while he'll give you a solid performance like he did on Sunday, but it
Yeah, I
just
mean
wasn't enough.
he's just kind of like a veteran presence. He's not
Yeah.
usually going to do anything. He's never going to be like too crazy, but he's also not going to Jameis Winston it usually and go in and throw
Mm-hmm.
3 straight interceptions. And yeah, I mean, it seemed like he almost in a way kind of unlocked some of this potential that everyone was talking about with this Carolina offense and all the moves they made. Like it seemed like he definitely got Adam Thielen and DJ Chark going, and obviously Chark was coming back from the injury, but
Mm-hmm.
it seems
Mm-hmm.
like he definitely at least got Adam Thielen going in a way that we haven't seen him look in a while. I mean, DJ Chark is kind of even prior to the injury had kind of seemed like he was going on a downturn towards his career. But in terms of the Seahawks, I mean, not to take really anything away from them, Geno Smith kind of started slow in this game. First half, he was looking a bit rough. Didn't seem like he was settled in. But then, Pete Carroll kind of made those second half adjustments. They started pounding the ball a little bit more with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. And I think the two of them just complement each other really well. And you kind of saw that during the game. Once they kind of started prioritizing feeding them the ball, the Panthers just didn't really seem like they were able to stop it. And then that in turn kind of opened up Seattle's passing game, allowed Geno to settle in a little bit more. DK Metcalf finished with over 100 yards, 6 receptions. So I mean, overall, it was just a pretty sound game from the Seahawks. I think. Offense did its job. Defense, obviously wasn't perfect, but did enough to hold on for the victory.
But yeah, no, Kenneth Walker was like my biggest takeaway from this game because I mean he had 18 carries and 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he has like 166 yards from scrimmage. He was very good in how they were. He looked like the dynamic Kenneth Walker that we kind of saw at points last year. And like we didn't, I don't think we saw it a whole lot throughout the first 2 weeks, but they were able to get him going against this very subpar Carolina front, and it worked out to their benefit in the end. Because I mean, again, when you're able to get chunks of yards like they were getting, and then on the other side of the ball, they were able to put Carolina in like bad. Not they were able to put Carolina in bad positions, but they were able to take advantage of it because it's like Carolina was just another one of those teams that I just saw Sunday, and it felt like every other play it was like a false start or holding or like they were just shooting themselves in the foot offensively. And that's another reason why Andy Dalton had to throw 58 passes. Because
They
again,
were behind the chains a lot.
they were behind the chains. They were trailing. Like you had to get something out of it. You're not going to run it with Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard 15, 20, 25 times in that situation. So they had to do something. And that's again like when they were trying to push the ball down the field a little bit. But Seattle's defense, when they were being put in those spots, they were at least getting off the field for the most part in those situations.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of like we said, just overall good performance from the Seahawks. They handled business, didn't play too far down to the competition. Panthers unfortunately move on to 0-3, but I guess the silver lining is the offense did look a little improved this week. You just hope that that improvement continues with your first overall draft pick, Bryce Young. But moving on to our next game was another just absolute horrible game. Don't even really want to talk about it or spend too much time talking about it, but that's the Kansas City Chiefs
The Taylor Swift Bowl.
dismantling the Bears 41-10. I don't even want to talk about Taylor Swift, dude. The amount of times
Neither do
I
I.
I heard her name. I mean, you would have made it. You would have thought that Pope Francis was sitting at a table with Jesus Christ up in the booth. Like every 3 seconds, it was something about Taylor Swift. Somebody on Red Zone mentioned Taylor Swift. Somebody on the broadcast mentions Taylor Swift. I go on TikTok and I see stuff about Taylor Swift. I'm just like, who cares?
Yeah,
Ce-
well, it's just
Celebrities
yeah.
date each other.
No, it's just the funny thing. Like they were panning to her, and it's just like, dude, it's like second and goal, and I have Isaiah Pacheco in fantasy. Like, can we not pan the camera to her every other play? It feels like.
Yeah,
But no, you're right on that point. This game just stunk though, so there wasn't a whole lot to take away. I mean, Mahomes was incredible. He obviously knows every single time he'll go up against the Bears, or that every single time he goes up against the Bears, he just shows another reason why they should have picked him, but didn't. Um,
yeah.
Pacheco looked
Did you see
good.
the thing he did where he was counting? He
Yeah,
counted like the amount of picks.
I mean Kelsey. I mean Travis got 7 catches, 69 yards. He looked like what we've seen from him over the past several years. In his first couple of games this last week was his first game of the season. He didn't play in week 1, but
Yeah,
like last week struggled. There was a lot of frustration for him. And so he looked like his old self, or his like how he looked how he usually looks. That's what I'm
yeah.
trying to say. But the Bears stink.
They're the worst team in the NFL. There's not really much else to say
Yeah,
there.
they stink. Justin Fields doesn't look good. Their run game stinks. Their receivers don't look good. Their defense is god
Nothing looks
awful.
good.
Nothing looks good.
My,
Nothing at all
my
looks good.
one of my 3 roommates is a big Bears fan, and so we pretty much watched like the entire game, or watched the entire first half, that is. And me and my other roommate, who was watching it with him, we just like couldn't help but start laughing at some points because it was just like Murphy's Law. It was just like
So bad.
something would happen, you'd be like, okay, well, it can't get any worse than this. And then Fields goes out and throws another pick, and it's just like, oh my God.
In 99 yards passing.
Yeah, and then it's like Fields makes his best throw like of the season, like for 30, 40 yards, and it goes right through DJ Moore's hands, and it's just like, oh my God, dude.
99 yards passing on 22 games in a game that they lost by 31 points, and that they were down 30, 40 plus most of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got screwed in Vendetta Fantasy League because I had Mahomes and Kelsey, and they were subbed out basically by halftime. Like after the first drive in the third quarter, they were subbed out, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, well, that
Yeah, this
kind of
game stunk.
sucks."
I don't want to talk about it anymore. This game
Yeah,
was awful.
not much else to say. Chiefs dominated. Bears suck, and I think that's going to continue. But our next game might be the most surprising one of the week. Probably is the most surprising one of the week, and that was the 0-2 Cardinals somehow beating the, at the time, 2-0 Dallas Cowboys, who frankly had looked almost unstoppable through those first 2 weeks. But Joshua Dobbs and Jonathan Gannon led Cardinals team, they came to play and frankly just whipped up on the Cowboys. And I'm starting to come to the realization that the Cardinals aren't going to be nearly as bad as everyone thought they were going to be. I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't very big on the Jonathan Gannon hire. I didn't think he was ready to be a head coach. I thought he had kind of been a little bailed out in Philadelphia by just how great our defense was. And I didn't think it was going to pan out, especially with that roster they have. But I mean, to his credit and to the Cardinals' credit, they've been in every single game and could very easily and probably should be 2-1 right now, if not for a historic collapse.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right on it. And like the thing with them that I was most impressed with is like, yeah, we didn't talk about this, but like obviously everyone knows about the Trayvon Diggs injury at this point.
Yeah.
But they won the line, like Arizona won the line of scrimmage in that game. I mean, they're without Zach Martin. I think they were without one other offensive line. I can't remember who, but Arizona won the line of scrimmage that game. Like they They were able to get the
Yeah,
ground
I
game
mean,
going. They rushed for
222
122.
rushing yards.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, they rushed for 222 rushing yards. James Conner had 14 for 98 and one. Josh Jobs, when he was scrambling, was getting out in space and and operating well. I mean, I also just didn't love Dallas's play calling. Like it felt like they were a little too reliant on the run game late in that, like over the course of that game. But then again, when we saw them, when we did see them pass it, Dak just did not look really that comfortable or good accuracy wise. It just didn't feel like, and like it took him a while to get CD Lamb involved. I know he caught 4 passes for 53 yards, but it's still that still itself was a problem throughout the first 2.5 quarters of the game. It felt like, um, but it felt like they were a little bit too reliant on the run game. And to Arizona's credit, they were winning the line of scrimmage and they were winning that battle. And when they were able to get Marquise Brown in space, and when they were able to get Rondale Moore in space, who had a 45-yard touchdown run, like that's important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Arizona just more or less kind of imposed their will
Mm-hmm.
over what many people thought was a better team. And I don't know if you ever saw that clip before the season that surfaced of Jonathan Gannon giving like that pep talk or his
Yeah.
motivational speech, and it just seemed like the most unmotivational thing ever. Clearly it worked, or clearly he said something else behind more closed doors. Because I mean, this Cardinals team just like doesn't look like a bad team really by any means. Like they've been in
Dobbs has
every
been
single
solid. Like he's a
yeah,
solid backup quarterback.
they've been in every single game they've played so far. Very well could be 2-1, and beat what many beat who many a team many people had as the best in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it wasn't like a super convincing win, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean they more or less controlled this game and made life real difficult for Dak Prescott pretty much all day.
Yeah, agreed.
And of course, as an Eagles fan, I'm always going to be happy when the Cowboys lose. I was hearing way too much. We the boys. This is our year.
Yeah,
It's
listen,
Super
you're
Bowl
gonna keep
year.
hearing it.
Oh, I know I will, but it's nice to not hear it for the week after losing to a team like the Cardinals. But moving on, we get to what was our Sunday night football game. That was the Steelers and the Raiders. I think this was a game that many people going into kind of expected to be a pretty, or at least we're expecting to be more of a sloppier type game. This is two offenses that just seem completely out of sync. I mean, one's led by Matt Canada, so you just kind of know what you're getting with that, and then the other one is led by Jimmy Garoppolo at QB. So you really just kind of got. I think it was just going to be which one messed up less, and Sunday night Garoppolo definitely messed up a lot more. I mean, he 3 interceptions, 72.5 quarterback rating. If he wasn't throwing the ball to Devontae Adams, good things usually just weren't happening. And I mean, the Raiders still weren't able to get Josh Jacobs going. That's going to be how they win most of their games, or pretty much how they win all their games. It's going to be by letting Josh Jacobs get going and imposing their will on the ground, and then kind of hopefully using that to allow Jimmy Garoppolo to, get more comfortable in the play action and whatnot. But right now, they just don't. The Raiders just can't really seem to get in sync. And for the Steelers, they seem to maybe, hopefully for their sake, kind of find a rhythm. Kenny Pickett, I think I heard this was his first multi-touchdown game,
Yep.
which was absolutely crazy to me. I mean, he looked really good for like the first time in his career. 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. The run game for the Steelers still not great. Najee Harris just sucks and is old and fat and slow.
He's like in this third year, third or
He
fourth year.
looks like he's Frank Gore in year 18 when he's out there running. But yeah, on the receiving end, George Pickens, 4 for 75. No touchdowns, but they were at least able to get him going. Calvin Austin, God, what was it with the Chickster that was going crazy because he had that
Yeah,
touchdown?
72 yarder.
Yeah, Chickster was telling everyone to do the Calvin Austin anytime touchdown, so he went crazy for that.
Plus 435, 425, whatever number he got it
Yeah,
at. I mean, he had it in a parlay, so it didn't hit because he had Mississippi State beating Bama, which didn't have, or not Mississippi State. He had Mississippi
Ole
beating
Miss.
Bama. Yeah, he had Ole
Yeah,
Miss
but
beating Bama, and that didn't hit. But yeah, he
yeah,
did call the Calvin Austin
he
anytime
did.
touchdown. He did say that on Hard Luck, so
He
credit to him.
did. And the Steelers, for the most part, were in control of this game for the first three quarters. They were kind of dominating, were imposing their will, and then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, the Raiders kind of made it interesting. We're down by a score, and then for some reason that I don't know, they're down 5 with 2 minutes left inside the 10-yard line.
Josh McDaniels went super brain, was like, you know what? He
And
said after the funniest thing he said after the game, he's like, yeah, we needed 2 possessions. And it's just like, you're down 8. You can still score. It's fourth down in plus territory. You can still get this and
they were in the red
score a
zone.
touchdown
It
and
wasn't
get
just
the
plus
2 point.
territory.
Yeah, you're in plus territory. Like, I don't like if you don't get it, you still have 2 or 3 timeouts or however many timeouts you had. You
I
still
think they
have the
had all
2 minute
three
warning.
and the 2-minute warning. So it's like
Um,
if you needed to play to get a stop anyway, at least try and go
right.
for the tie.
Right. And so it's just why exactly why do you need two drive? You can do it in one drive like that. You are literally there in one drive. Like, I don't, again, and if you mess up that fourth down, I don't remember how long it was. It wasn't that long, but if you mess up that fourth down, then
You can still
again,
try and get a
your
stop.
defense is on the field and you're saving time. Like, I mean, and it's
Raiders
also
gonna
funny.
Raider.
It's also funny because, in a weird way, time wise, that when they kicked that field goal and the defender jumped off the back, that kind of, I mean, Vegas made it, but or I think they made it, or I can't remember if it was blocked or whatever. But in a weird way, that still helped Pittsburgh because like a minute and a half went off the clock, like from that point until their next field goal attempt, which was the one their final one, which they made. But that was just another minute and a half that the Raiders probably wish they had back because of they were down by a possession. But McDaniel's tried to go super brain and be the smartest person in the room, but it's just like you had an opportunity to at least try to go for the touchdown, or at least try to get a first down and get even closer. I think they were in the red zone, or at least on the brink of it. Like, you were in plus territory already. You were pretty deep in plus territory. So why don't you? I don't get that strategy. Like, I guess you're saving time a little bit by, like, just in case you don't get the 2 point after scoring the touchdown, but you can still score the touchdown and get the 2 point. That's what teams do. Like, you don't have to kick the field goal here because you still need a touchdown. So, like, I don't get that. You're relying on your defense, which isn't that good of a defense, to get a stop against, albeit a bad or not a bad offense, but a middling offense. I don't know. It's just not the greatest strategy,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Raiders are gonna Raider. McDaniel's just gonna continue to make dumb decisions, but what are you gonna do? That's Raider football. They are now 1-2 on the year. Steelers advanced to 2-1. But with
An
that,
ugly 2-1.
yep, an ugly 2-1, but it is still 2-1. That's all you can ask for in the NFL. I don't know how sustainable it'll be for the Steelers because I do not trust Matt Canada at all to lead an
Garrett does.
offense.
No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say he'll kill you for that. But that concludes the Sunday coverage of games. We now make it to the games that occurred last night. Now I was at work from like 4 to midnight, so I pretty much was at
Jeez.
work for all these games. I did of course have the Eagle game on while I was at work. They can make me come in, but they can't make me not watch. So I at least got to see bits and pieces of that game. Didn't get to see the full thing. But my Eagles did come out on top 25-11. It was another game kind of for the Eagles where the offense just still doesn't seem to be clicking quite on all cylinders. Jalen Hurts, frankly, from the stuff that I saw and then looking back on the game after, he didn't really look great. There were some throws where I wasn't sure if there was like
Mm-hmm.
miscommunications
Mm-hmm.
on like routes. There was one with Goddard where it looked like Goddard was almost like running an option route, and they
Mm-hmm.
just were on the wrong page. But then like that one interception he threw in the middle of the field where he just completely mistimed the in route and threw it
Mhm.
right at the guy. There were some throws where he just didn't really look comfortable or didn't really kind of look like he was fully in rhythm yet. But again, I mean, the Eagles just on the ground. I think we all have our answer now. Swift will be the RB1. I know Gainwell still had 14 carries to Swift 16, but
A lot of that was in garbage time
Swift turned
for
in, yeah,
Gainwell.
but Swift turned those 16 carries into 130 yards. So
And
I
that's
know
a
you,
good defensive front too for Tampa.
yeah, I know you were asking, I know everyone was asking who was gonna, and we talked about it on the last show we did, who was gonna be the Eagles' lead back. I think now we can confidently say it's going to be Swift. He just looks so good. But I mean, man, that Eagles offensive line, just when you're watching those runs, it's like, especially with how good that Bucks defensive front is, there were all these runs where Swift's just getting 8 yards before he's even getting touched. I mean, he's getting touched by safeties and
Mhm.
cornerbacks because the holes that were being opened up were just absolutely insane. And yeah, I mean, I think the passing game still, in regards to Jalen Hurts, still isn't fully quite in rhythm. AJ Brown kind of had his breakout game, 9 for 131, but aside from him, nobody really on the receiving end was fully able to get going. Granted, it's what's going to happen when you're running the ball as well as the Eagles have been recently, but also
Mhm.
shout out to Olamide Zacchaeus. He had his big play. He caught his touchdown. Didn't have that on my bingo card going into this game. And I mean, again, the real star for this Eagles team was the defense.
I was gonna say
The
shout
Eagles
out to the defense
defense,
because it's like they dominated for three
yeah. I
quarters.
mean, they only finished technically with 2 sacks, but it seemed like even just in the short time that I was watching, it seemed like there was so much more sacks. It just seemed like there was always somebody
They were
in the
getting a lot of pressure on.
backfield. Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
Jalen Carter continues to look absolutely amazing. He had a half sack and that forced fumble. And shout out to Sidney Brown. He had a couple big plays. He had that one nice play on Mike Evans. We ripped the ball out of his hands.
Hmm.
He wasn't a starter going into the year, so he kind of came in and did his thing. And then, Josh Jobe, I got to say, he didn't do as bad as I thought. I was petrified going into this game, having Josh Jobe on the outside because we had Bradbury in on the slot. So I thought that either Godwin or Evans was just going to have an absolute field day. But, to Jobe's credit, he actually wasn't horrible. So,
Godwin did
you know,
have or not Godwin. Evans did have a few drop passes that probably should have been caught. Like he had, I think it was on their first
yeah.
drive. He caught one that like it hit off his helmet and like it was just like right through his hands and it was just a drop.
Yeah,
He
Slay
had a
almost had that pick.
yeah, he had a missed touchdown to where they threw it and he was like almost like falling backwards. It felt like because I think Baker underthrew the route and that probably it was a drop pass that probably should have been caught. But he had a few drops. I mean, he was much better in the second half and especially in that fourth quarter. But he had a few drops. I mean, he finished with 5 for 60 with one touchdown. So it's not like the worst stat line in the end. It wasn't
Yeah.
the worst performance, but 10 targets. Like there was just a few times where I mean, again, to Philly's credit though, they were doing a good job, like holding Rashad White to really nothing on the ground. It felt like he couldn't get going at all, and that's something that Tampa wants to do is establish the run. But when they were putting those long down and distance situations, I thought Philly's secondary and Philly's pass rush, most importantly, did a good job of getting to Baker and making things difficult for him. But yeah, Evans did have a few big drops.
Yeah, definitely very true. And I think just with the Eagles team, I mean, obviously I'll take how good the defense has looked, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still wanting to see a little bit more from the offense as a whole. I mean, the run game
But
has looked fine. Like, we don't really need to do anything else in terms of running the ball, but it just seems like we're in a spot right now where once we get away from running the ball, the offense seems to get a little stagnant.
mm-hmm.
And that's not something we saw last year. I trust Jalen Hurts and Sirianni to kind of make some adjustments and figure some things out. Still relatively early. I mean, you're 3-0, so there's really no reason to panic. And I mean, kind of like I said, it just seems like the Eagles are 3-0 right now, but it still seems like their offense isn't quite fully getting going yet. But
Mm-hmm.
they were able to get the job done last night, and that's all I need to go to sleep happy.
Mm-hmm. And there was some like I think I mean obviously we were hinting at it with like the offense not clicking. Like there were some points left on the board, like those first couple of drives.
With that first drive, they went for it, didn't get it.
Yeah, that play action rollout. I think he threw to like Goddard and missed it, but it was just like their everything was humming up until that point. There was another second drive where they got in the plus territory, but had to settle for a field goal. Like there were some points left on the board that I thought will help Philly over time. Just kind of iron. I think they're going to iron those mistakes out. And Sirianni said like post game that like, yeah, no one's playing their best football or like wants to play their best football at this point in the season. Like that's it's a gradual process from week 1 and to week 18 and so on and so forth.
100%.
So yeah, no, I think Philly will be better, and I think they're going to get that stuff ironed out. There's no reason for me to believe it won't happen. So
Well, I'm certainly hoping so, but moving on to our last game of the night, I'll be honest, I really didn't get to see really any of this game. Like I said, I was at work. I was watching the Eagle game, but that meant that I wasn't able to watch too much of this Bengals Rams game. I was just more surprised at the fact going into it that Joe Burrow was playing. I mean, everything indicating up to this point was saying he wasn't going to play. It seemed like he was going to be out. And then last second, the Bengals are kind of like, okay, well, we don't want to start 0-3. I think they know
mm-hmm.
kind of what that 0-3 start does. I don't know if I would have done it. You just paid the guy an ungodly amount of money. Maybe you want to protect him. That's just my thought process.
mm-hmm.
But it more or less worked out. I mean, I still wouldn't say this Bengals offense is even close to firing on all cylinders. I mean, obviously, with a
Yeah,
banged up Joe Burrow, you're not going to expect that. I think the good sign for the Bengals was you finally saw Jamar Chase
he looked really good
kind
that
of have
second
that
and that
game.
final 3 quarters. He looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, 12 receptions for 141 yards, no touchdowns, but I mean, you kind of finally saw him be the true number one receiver. Uh, I think the only other thing though that I'd be worried about is for the Bengals, you're still not seeing Jamar Chase and T. Higgins get going. I mean, obviously in years past, that's always been when this offense is impossible to stop. When you got the two of them, kind of doing their own thing and forcing the defense to put more resources on them, and then they're able to run the ball more and be more effective on the ground. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, just kind of seemed like their offense was still a little stagnant. They weren't really able to get going too much. But on the
Mm-hmm.
other end, their defense looked rather good, and I mean, especially their run defense. In years past, the Bengals haven't really, I feel like, been known too much for their run defense. But they came in and were able to hold Kyron Williams. 10 carries, 38 yards. I mean, he wasn't really able to get anything going after that big week last week. Matthew Stafford definitely looked uncomfortable for most of the game. 18 for 33,
Mm-hmm.
269 yards, touchdown, 2 picks. They were doing a good job of kind of making him uncomfortable in the pocket. He wasn't really able to find that connection with the guys like Puka or Tutu Atwell like we've seen in the weeks past.
No, like they made it difficult for him. I also again you mentioned the run defense like DJ Reader, BJ Hill, Logan Wilson had himself a game. Sam Hubbard looked good. Like I mean, obviously, then like Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator, did a really good job. Um, I think with like what he was like the type of pressures that he was sending, like the stunts and everything. But um, and like yes, like Stafford, there was a few different times where he just was missing throws. Like I don't think it was a lot to do to like the pressure or anything. He was just missing passes that he usually makes, like passes that weren't necessarily down the field.
He
I
just looked
think
a
there
little
was a couple that were
off.
missed out. Yeah, he was just a little off, and like Burrow was too, to some extent. I mean, you could just tell that he wasn't 100%, especially when it's through the right calf. I mean, he's trying to push off that foot when he gets into that drop, and he there were just times where he wasn't able to put not I wasn't able to put pressure, like he wasn't very mobile to begin with, and I think the Bengals did it. The Bengals offensive line did a good job for the most part keeping him upright. I mean, 99 got him a couple of times, Aaron Donald, but um, other than that, like they did a good job protecting him. He didn't have to scramble a whole lot, which is good for him, obviously, because again, when he was scrambling, he was just throwing it out of bounds as quickly as he possibly could. Um, on the T Higgins front, like he had a few really bad drops. Like I'll just come out and say that he had a few really bad drops, and it's just like I don't know if it was just like mental. Like I don't know what it is. It was just one of those nights for him. Um, Jamar looked phenomenal again in those final three quarters. I think he got off to a little bit of a slow start. I mean, they weren't feeding him the ball as much. Joe wasn't. Um, again, a lot of what Joe was doing last night was just trying to get the ball out as quickly as he could. Because again, he does have that calf injury. And he doesn't. You don't want to hold that ball for very long. So Cincinnati, they were trying to scheme up stuff to where he wasn't having to. He was just having to like one or two drops and then throw it to either his first, second, or third read as quickly as he possibly could. And he did a good job of that. And part of that was moving Jamar around and putting him in advantageous positions throughout that game. And I thought they did a really good job with that. And it looked as more and more the game went on, Joe looked more and more comfortable, and he looked more and more like his old self, even though he clearly wasn't 100%. He said after the game there wasn't any setbacks, which is good news, obviously, because again, when you are playing a game where you have that bad calf injury and you re-aggravate it, I mean, the calf injuries are closely linked to the Achilles, and so it's
Yeah,
like you
it's
don't want
scary.
something like that happening. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a big win for the Bengals. Must win is the most overused term in sports, in my opinion, but this was about as close as a must win can get week 3 into the season.
Right.
And they, handled business. Wasn't a pretty win by any means, but they do, at least for now, keep their playoff hopes a little bit alive
It's going
by
to be tough in
avoiding
that
the dreaded
AFC.
0-3.
It's going to be tough in that AFC. We've seen them do it before. They were 0-2 last year, made it. So
Yep. But, I mean, with that, we have gone through every single game from week 3 of the NFL season. Was pretty interesting week of games. A whole lot of ugly.
they all stung.
Yeah, a whole lot of ugly mixed with a little bit of good and not a whole lot in between. But, I mean, it's the NFL. We still love it. We still watch it. And we'll do it again next week with a smile on our face.
Yeah.
But I don't really have anything else to add. Matt, anything else you
Uh,
need to add, talk about?
I don't really have anything else to add.
Vent.
No, I think I'm good. I mean, they're playing the London game this week. Do you usually watch those, or do you usually?
Unless the Eagles are playing, I'm not waking up at like 6 a.m. for the games.
Okay,
If my team's playing, I'll wake up. But
fair enough. Fair enough.
usually I'll just wake up and check the score.
They're doing it exclusively on ESPN Plus this year, which I think is interesting. So
That is interesting. So yeah, I probably won't be watching the London game. Full disclosure, I'll get the highlights and rundown after.
yeah,
But with that, that is the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show NFL Week 3 review. Make sure follow, like, subscribe, check out the site. We just put out a week 3 overreactions article. You can check out what all of our hottest takes are around the league. But from Jack to Matt, hope you guys all have a great rest of your day and enjoyed your football Sunday.